Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell stood at the edge of the playground, watching her 5-year-old daughter Emma swing higher and higher into the autumn air. Sarah's hands were shoved deep in her jacket pockets, her short dark hair still damp from the morning shower. She'd been home from deployment for exactly 2 weeks, trying to adjust to normal life in the small coastal town of Oceanside, Virginia. "Higher, Mommy, push me higher," Emma called out, her blonde pigtails flying behind her. Sarah smiled and walked over, giving the swing a gentle push. These moments were everything. After 8 months in the Middle East coordinating special operations, after missing Emma's first day of kindergarten and her 5th birthday, after video calls that never felt like enough, this was what mattered. "Sarah Mitchell, is that you?" Sarah turned to see 3 women approaching. She recognized them vaguely from the parent Facebook group: Brenda, Diane, and Kelly. They were the core of what Emma's teacher had politely called the involved moms. Sarah had met them briefly at school pickup once, and the encounter had been chilly at best. "Hi," Sarah said, keeping her tone friendly. "Nice morning, isn't it?" Brenda, a tall woman with perfectly highlighted hair, looked Sarah up and down. "We heard you were back. Must be nice, dropping in and out of your daughter's life like that." Sarah felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her expression neutral. Years of military training had taught her not to react to provocations. "I serve my country. It's not always easy, but it's important work." "Important work," Kelly repeated with a laugh. "Is that what you call abandoning your child? Emma told my daughter she doesn't even remember what you look like sometimes." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Sarah glanced at Emma, still swinging happily, oblivious to the conversation. "I do the best I can," Sarah said quietly. "We all make sacrifices." "Sacrifices?" Diane stepped closer, her voice dripping with contempt. "You know what sacrifice is. It's being here every single day. It's baking for the fundraisers you miss. It's volunteering in the classroom while you're off playing soldier. Some of us are real mothers." Sarah's hands clenched in her pockets. She'd faced enemy fire. She'd made split-second decisions that saved lives. She'd commanded respect from some of the toughest operators in the military. But standing here, being told she wasn't a good mother, that cut deeper than any blade. "I should go," Sarah said, turning toward Emma. "Running away again," Brenda called after her. "That seems to be your specialty." Sarah helped Emma off the swing, ignoring the cruel laughter behind her. Emma chattered happily about her day as they walked to the car, but Sarah barely heard her. The shame burned in her chest, mixing with anger she couldn't express. That evening, after tucking Emma into bed, Sarah sat alone in her small kitchen. The house felt too quiet. She'd bought it 3 years ago, imagining it would be a home for her and Emma. But between deployments and training exercises, she'd spent maybe 6 cumulative months here. Her phone buzzed. A message from her commanding officer: "New assignment brief Monday, likely deployment in 6 weeks." 6 weeks. She'd have 6 weeks with Emma before leaving again. Sarah put her head in her hands and let herself cry, something she never allowed herself to do anywhere else. The next morning at school drop-off, Sarah noticed the other mothers whispering. When she walked Emma to her classroom, Brenda deliberately turned her back. The teacher, Mrs. Henderson, gave Sarah a sympathetic look but said nothing. "Mommy, why don't the other mommies like you?" Emma asked as they stood in the hallway. Sarah knelt down, smoothing Emma's hair. "Sometimes people don't understand the choices we make, baby, but I love you more than anything in this world. You know that, right?" Emma nodded, but her eyes were confused and sad. The week crawled by. Sarah tried to be present, to make every moment count. She volunteered for the school's fall festival committee, thinking it might help bridge the gap with the other mothers. Instead, they gave her the worst jobs, setting up trash cans, parking lot duty, and excluded her from all the planning meetings. Friday afternoon, Sarah was at the grocery store when she ran into Kelly and Diane. She nodded politely and tried to walk past, but Kelly blocked her cart. "We've been talking," Kelly said, loud enough for other shoppers to hear. "We don't think it's appropriate for Emma to be in our children's playgroups anymore. It's confusing for them to have a mother who's never around." "You're isolating a 5-year-old child because you don't like her mother's career." Sarah's voice was calm, but her eyes were steel. "We're protecting our children from inconsistency," Diane said smugly. "Emma needs stability, not a part-time parent who thinks wearing a uniform makes her special." Sarah pushed her cart forward, forcing them to step aside. "Excuse me." As she walked away, she heard Diane say loudly, "Military wives I could understand, but a woman who actually serves, what kind of mother does that?" That night, Emma cried herself to sleep because none of her friends could come to her birthday party next week. Sarah had sent out invitations to the whole class. Every single one had been declined. Sarah sat on her couch, staring at the wall of commendations and medals she kept in the hallway. Bronze Star, Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal, 2 Purple Hearts. She'd bled for her country. She'd saved lives. She'd earned the respect of warriors. But she couldn't protect her daughter from mean mothers at a playground. For the first time in her career, Sarah wondered if she'd made the wrong choice. The following Tuesday, Sarah received a call from Emma's school. The principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, needed to see her immediately. Sarah's heart sank. She left work early and drove to Oceanside Elementary with her stomach in knots. Mrs. Rodriguez was a kind woman in her 50s who had always been supportive. But today, her expression was troubled. "Lieutenant Commander Mitchell, thank you for coming," she said, gesturing to a chair. "We've had some concerns raised by several parents." Sarah sat down, her back straight. "What kind of concerns?" The principal sighed. "They're questioning whether your lifestyle is appropriate for Emma. They've submitted a formal complaint suggesting that your frequent absences might constitute neglect." "Neglect?" Sarah's voice was sharp. "I'm serving my country, not neglecting my child." "I understand that, and personally, I'm grateful for your service. But these parents are influential in our community. Brenda Morrison's husband is on the school board. Kelly Chang's family has donated thousands to the school. They're threatening to escalate this to Child Protective Services." Sarah felt the room spin. "They're threatening to have my daughter taken away because I'm in the military. They're saying that Emma shows signs of emotional distress, that she's withdrawn in class, that she cries when discussing family activities." Mrs. Rodriguez looked pained. "I have to take these complaints seriously. Emma is struggling because those women told their children to exclude her." Sarah's control was slipping. "They're bullying a 5-year-old to get back at me." "Do you have proof of that?" Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it. She had nothing concrete, just nasty comments and cold shoulders, nothing that would stand up to scrutiny. "I'll need you to meet with our school counselor," Mrs. Rodriguez said gently, "and perhaps consider whether Emma might benefit from more stability at home." Sarah drove home in a daze. They wanted her to quit, to give up her career, her calling, everything she'd worked for, to prove she was a good mother by their standards. That evening, as Sarah made dinner, Emma played quietly in the living room. Too quietly. Sarah watched her daughter arrange her dolls in careful rows, talking to them in whispers. When had Emma become so subdued? "What are you playing, sweetheart?" Sarah asked. "School," Emma said softly. "But my dolls don't have any friends either." Sarah's heart broke a little more. The next day, Sarah was at the base going through her assignment brief when her phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Lieutenant Commander Mitchell, this is Kathy Brennan from Virginia Child Protective Services. We've received a report concerning your daughter Emma. I'll need to schedule a home visit." The investigation had begun. Sarah hired a lawyer that afternoon. Margaret Chen was a sharp family law attorney who'd handled military custody cases before. "They're using your service against you," Margaret said, reviewing the complaint. It's discrimination, but it's hard to prove. These women are smart. They've framed it as concern for the child, not bias against you. What are my chances? Sarah asked. Margaret was quiet for a moment. If CPS finds Emma is well cared for and happy, you'll be fine. But if Emma continues to show distress at school, if the complaints continue, if these influential parents keep pushing, she trailed off. You might have to make some difficult choices. That weekend was the fall festival at school. Sarah had signed up for parking lot duty, and she intended to show up, to show everyone she was present, engaged, trying. But when she arrived Saturday morning, Brenda was waiting with 2 security volunteers. I'm sorry, Lieutenant Commander, but we've decided we have enough volunteers. We won't be needing you today. I signed up 2 weeks ago, Sarah said evenly. Plans change. Brenda's smile was poisonous. Besides, wouldn't you rather spend this time with Emma? You have so little of it. Sarah could see other mothers watching, whispering. She could see Emma at the face-painting booth with her babysitter, looking small and alone while other children clustered with their families. She could feel the trap closing around her. That night, Sarah sat in her car outside the house for a long time before going in. She'd survived enemy ambushes. She'd completed Hell Week. She'd jumped from planes and kicked down doors and saved hostages under fire. But she was losing this battle, and she didn't know how to fight back. Monday morning, Sarah dropped Emma at school and watched her daughter walk into the building with slumped shoulders. When had her bright, happy girl become so sad? As Sarah turned to leave, she heard raised voices from the parking lot. 3 men were arguing with the crossing guard, a retired Navy SEAL named Jack Cordova who worked part-time at the school. Sarah knew Jack slightly. He was a single father to a 6-year-old son named Tyler. I don't care what you think, one of the men was shouting. He was tall and drunk, weaving on his feet even though it was 8 in the morning. My kid goes to this school, and I'll park wherever I want. Sir, you need to move your vehicle, Jack said calmly. You're blocking the fire lane and you're clearly intoxicated. Don't tell me what to do, you washed-up jarhead. The man shoved Jack hard. Jack didn't budge. Sir, I'm asking you nicely. Move your vehicle or I'll call the police. The other 2 men stepped forward. Sarah recognized them. They were husbands of the mother clique. She'd seen them at school events, always loud, always entitled. You think you're tough, the second man sneered. You're nothing but a glorified babysitter now. Jack's expression didn't change, but Sarah saw his stance shift slightly. She knew that stance. He was preparing. Last chance, Jack said quietly. The drunk man swung a wild punch. What happened next took less than 10 seconds. Jack moved with the fluid precision of someone who'd spent decades in combat. He deflected the punch, swept the man's legs, and put him on the ground. When the second man charged, Jack sidestepped and used the man's momentum to send him sprawling into a parked car. The third man hesitated, and Jack fixed him with a look that made him back away, hands up. Sarah had moved forward instinctively, ready to help, but it was already over. Jack had his phone out, calling 911, one foot casually resting on the drunk man's back to keep him down. Parents were screaming, children were crying, and Sarah heard a small voice shout, "Daddy." Jack's son Tyler was running from the school building, tears streaming down his face. "Daddy, please help her. They're hurting Miss Emma." Sarah didn't think, she ran. She followed Tyler through the school doors, down the hallway, past startled teachers. Her heart hammered in her chest. Emma. Someone was hurting Emma. They burst into the girls' bathroom. Sarah stopped short. Emma was on the floor, her dress torn, her face wet with tears. Standing over her were 3 girls, daughters of Brenda, Kelly, and Diane. They were older, maybe 7 or 8, and they held Emma's backpack, its contents scattered across the wet floor. "You don't belong here," one of the girls was saying. "Your mom's never around anyway. Why don't you just leave?" "Hey," Sarah's voice cracked like a whip. The girls jumped, their faces going pale. One of them tried to hide something behind her back. "Step away from my daughter, now." The girls scrambled back. Sarah knelt beside Emma, gathering her into her arms. Emma sobbed into her mother's shoulder, her small body shaking. "What did you do to her?" Sarah's voice was deadly calm as she looked at the three girls. "We didn't do anything," the oldest one said quickly. "She fell." She fell and her dress tore and her backpack exploded. Sarah stood, lifting Emma with her. "Don't lie to me." Tyler had run to get the principal. Within minutes, Mrs. Rodriguez arrived along with Jack, who'd left the drunk fathers in police custody. Behind them came Brenda, Kelly, and Diane, alerted by text from their daughters. "What is going on here?" Brenda demanded. "Why is my daughter being interrogated?" "Your daughter and her friends just assaulted mine," Sarah said coldly, "in a school bathroom." "That's ridiculous," Kelly pushed forward. "Our daughters would never." "I saw them," Tyler interrupted, his voice small but firm. "I was in the hallway. I heard Emma crying and I looked in. They pushed her down and tore her backpack and said mean things." "He's lying to protect his father's friend," Diane said quickly. "This is clearly a setup." Mrs. Rodriguez looked at the torn dress, the scattered belongings, Emma's tear-stained face. "I'm calling all of your husbands, and we're reviewing the hallway security footage." The mothers' faces went white. 2 hours later, Sarah sat in the principal's office with Emma asleep in her lap. Jack was there too, Tyler tucked against his side. The police had arrested the three fathers for assault and public intoxication, and the security footage had shown exactly what Tyler described: three older girls following Emma into the bathroom, blocking the door and attacking her. "I am so sorry," Mrs. Rodriguez said, her voice shaking. "This should never have happened in my school." Brenda, Kelly, and Diane sat in chairs along the wall, their husbands beside them in handcuffs, waiting to be processed. Their daughters had already been suspended pending expulsion hearings. "Our daughters said she provoked them," Brenda tried one more time. "Emma has been telling lies about us." "Enough," Jack's voice cut through the room. "I've been watching you three for months. You're bullies, you're raising bullies, and you targeted Sarah and Emma because she serves and you're threatened by that." "Threatened?" Kelly laughed shrilly. "By her, she's barely a mother. She's a decorated combat officer who's sacrificed more for this country than you could possibly understand," Jack said quietly. "I know her record. I know what she's done. And the fact that she's managed to raise a sweet, kind daughter while doing it, that makes her a better parent than any of you will ever be." Sarah looked at Jack in surprise. She hadn't known he knew her service record. One of the handcuffed husbands spoke up. "This is all blown out of proportion. Our wives were just concerned about the child's welfare." "Your wives filed false reports with CPS to harass a single mother," Jack interrupted. "Your wives instructed their children to isolate and bully a 5-year-old. Your wives weaponized this school community. And you three showed up drunk and assaulted someone on school property." He leaned forward. "Do you have any idea how much trouble you're all in?" The room fell silent. Mrs. Rodriguez cleared her throat. "I'll be recommending expulsion for all three girls, and I'll be filing a full report with the school board about parental harassment of Lieutenant Commander Mitchell. The CPS complaint will be noted as unfounded and malicious." "You can't do this," Brenda said, her voice rising to a shriek. "My husband is on the school board. We donate to this school. We are done here," Mrs. Rodriguez finished. "Your children are no longer welcome at Oceanside Elementary." As the police led the fathers away and the mothers followed, still protesting, Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. But she knew this wasn't really over. People like that didn't just give up. Jack seemed to read her thoughts. "They'll try to retaliate," he said quietly after everyone had left. "Rich, entitled people always do." "I know," Sarah said, stroking Emma's hair. "I just don't know what else they can do to us." Jack was quiet for a moment. "Can I ask you something? Your service record, you led the team that extracted those journalists from Syria 2 years ago, didn't you?" Sarah looked at him sharply. "That operation was classified. How do you know about that?" "Because I was on the sister team providing overwatch." Jack smiled slightly. "You got them out clean." "It was brilliant work." Sarah remembered that night. The fear, the adrenaline, the incredible relief when everyone made it to the extraction point alive. "You were there. 300 yards out with a rifle, making sure nobody interfered." He paused. "I've wanted to thank you. One of those journalists was my cousin." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "I was just doing my job." "You saved her life, and probably her career." Jack looked at Tyler and Emma, both sleeping now. "People like Brenda don't understand what we do, what we sacrifice, what our kids sacrifice, but that doesn't make it less important." That night, after putting Emma to bed, Sarah received an email from Margaret, her lawyer. The subject line read, "You need to see this." The email contained screenshots of a private Facebook group called Oceanside School Moms. Sarah scrolled through posts from Brenda, Kelly, and Diane, detailing their campaign against her. Plans to file CPS complaints, strategies to isolate Emma, explicit instructions to their daughters to make the Mitchell girl unwelcome. "This is evidence of conspiracy to harass," Margaret's note read. "We can use this." But the final screenshot made Sarah's blood run cold. It was from earlier that evening, posted by Brenda. "This isn't over. I've made calls. Mitchell will regret crossing us. By the end of the week, she'll wish she'd never come to Oceanside." Sarah sat back, her mind racing. What were they planning? The answer came the next morning. Sarah was at the base when her commanding officer called her into his office. His expression was grave. "Sarah, I've received a formal complaint from a civilian community group. They're alleging that you engaged in threatening behavior towards civilian families, that you used your military position to intimidate them." Sarah's stomach dropped. "Sir, that's not true. They attacked my daughter." "I believe you, but they've filed this with the Inspector General's office. There's going to be an investigation." He paused. "Until it's resolved, you're being placed on administrative leave." "Sir, I have a deployment brief next week." "The deployment is on hold. I'm sorry, Sarah. My hands are tied." Sarah walked out of the building in a daze. They'd done it. They'd found a way to hurt her career, to undermine everything she'd built. When she got home, there was a news van parked outside. A reporter approached her with a microphone. "Lieutenant Commander Mitchell, is it true you threatened civilian families? That you used your military training to intimidate mothers at your daughter's school?" Sarah pushed past without answering, but she could see neighbors watching from their windows. By evening, the story was on local news, twisted, distorted, making her sound like a violent vigilante who terrorized innocent parents. Her phone rang constantly. Other parents from school, people she barely knew, calling to tell her they believed her, that they'd seen the bullying. But their support, while appreciated, couldn't undo the damage. That night, as Sarah sat in her darkened living room, she heard a knock at the door. She opened it to find Jack standing there, still in his crossing guard uniform. "I heard about the news," he said. "I'm sorry." "They're destroying me," Sarah said, her voice hollow. "My career, my reputation, everything." Jack stepped inside. "Not if we fight back. I made some calls today, to some people I know from my SEAL days." He paused. "Sarah, help is coming, I promise you that." "What kind of help?" "The kind that matters." Jack squeezed her shoulder. "Trust me, by this time tomorrow everything is going to change." Sarah woke the next morning to the sound of engines. Lots of engines. She went to the window and froze. Parked along her quiet suburban street were 3 black SUVs. As she watched, more vehicles arrived, official Navy cars with government plates. Neighbors came out onto their porches, staring. There was a knock at the door. Sarah opened it to find a Navy commander in dress uniform. "Lieutenant Commander Mitchell, I'm Commander James Reeves from Naval Special Warfare Command. May I come in?" Sarah stepped aside, her mind reeling. "What's going on?" "We're here about the allegations against you." Commander Reeves sat down, his expression serious, "and about a whole lot more." Over the next hour, Sarah learned that Jack had indeed made calls to his former commanding officer, who was now a rear admiral. The admiral had taken a personal interest in Sarah's case. Within 12 hours, naval investigators had descended on Oceanside. "We've reviewed the school security footage," Commander Reeves explained. "We've interviewed witnesses. We've examined the Facebook group evidence your lawyer provided. And we've looked into Brenda Morrison, Kelly Chang, and Diane Foster's backgrounds." And Sarah's voice was barely a whisper. "Brenda Morrison's husband is under investigation by the school board for financial irregularities. Turns out those generous donations came from funds he embezzled from the school's budget. Kelly Chang has been filing fraudulent insurance claims for years. We found that when we ran background checks. And Diane Foster's husband has 3 DUIs that were somehow kept off his record, probably through family connections and money." Sarah's head spun. "I don't understand. Why does the Navy care about this?" Commander Reeves leaned forward. "Because you're one of ours, Lieutenant Commander. Because what they did to you was wrong. And because the Admiral doesn't take kindly to decorated officers being harassed by civilian bullies." He paused. "Also, do you know who else lives in Oceanside? 32 active-duty military families and over 50 veterans. When word got out about what was happening to you, a lot of people got very interested." There was another knock at the door. This time, when Sarah opened it, she found herself face to face with a man in Admiral's whites. She snapped to attention. "At ease, Lieutenant Commander." Rear Admiral Richard Hayes stepped inside. Sarah recognized him from official photos. He was a legend in the SEAL community. "I apologize for the early visit. May I speak with you?" They sat in Sarah's living room, and the Admiral got straight to the point. "Jack Cordova was one of my best operators," he said. "When he called yesterday and told me what was happening, I got on a plane. I've spent the last 18 hours reviewing your case and talking to people." He pulled out a folder. "Did you know that Brenda Morrison's group has targeted 4 other military families in this community over the past 3 years?" Sarah's eyes widened. "No, sir, I had no idea." 2 of those families transferred away. One soldier took early retirement because his son was being bullied so badly. This is a pattern." The Admiral's jaw tightened. "Mrs. Morrison and her friends have been using their wealth and influence to drive military families out of Oceanside. We think it's because military housing developments have been driving up property values, pricing out some of the older, established families." "So this was never really about me," Sarah said slowly. "Oh, it was about you. You're successful, strong, and you don't back down. You scared them." The Admiral smiled grimly. "But you're also not alone anymore." Over the next several hours, Sarah watched as the situation unfolded. The news vans returned, but this time they were interviewing the Admiral, who gave a powerful statement about military families and community responsibility. The school board held an emergency meeting and voted to remove Morrison from his position. The police arrested Kelly Chang on fraud charges. Diane Foster's husband was finally charged with his DUIs. But more importantly, the truth came out. Other families stepped forward with their own stories of bullying and harassment. Teachers admitted they'd been pressured to give preferential treatment to certain families. The Facebook group was exposed in detail. By evening, the narrative had completely reversed. Sarah wasn't the aggressor. She was a victim of systematic harassment and discrimination. Emma was in the backyard playing with Tyler when Jack came over. He looked exhausted but satisfied. "The school board just announced a new anti-bullying policy," he said. "Named it after Emma. They're also implementing protections specifically for military families." Sarah shook her head in wonder. I can't believe this is happening. Yesterday I thought I'd lost everything. You never lost anything, Jack said firmly. You just needed backup. That's what we do, we watch each other's six. That night there was a community meeting at the school. Sarah almost didn't go, but the Admiral insisted. When she walked into the packed auditorium, she expected hostility. Instead, the room erupted in applause. Families, military and civilian alike, stood to cheer for her. Parents she'd never met came up to shake her hand and apologize. Emma's classmates had made a banner that read, "We love Miss Emma and her brave mom." Mrs. Rodriguez took the microphone. Tonight, we address a serious failure in our community. We allowed a small group of bullies to create a toxic environment that hurt children and families. That ends now. She looked directly at Sarah. Lieutenant Commander Mitchell, on behalf of Oceanside Elementary and this community, I offer our deepest apologies. You and Emma are valued members of our school family. Sarah stood, Emma in her arms, and addressed the crowd. I joined the military to serve and protect, but I never expected I'd have to fight so hard just to be a mom in my own community. Her voice cracked. Thank you to everyone who stood up for us. Thank you for seeing the truth. And thank you for reminding me that most people are good, even when a few try to make us forget that. The applause was deafening. 2 weeks later, Sarah was back at work, her record cleared and her deployment reinstated. But now things were different. The military community in Oceanside had formed a support network for families dealing with deployments and transitions. Jack had become one of her closest friends. And Emma was thriving again, surrounded by real friends and supportive teachers. On her last evening before deployment, Sarah took Emma to the park where this had all started. They swung together, just as they had before, but this time other families waved and smiled. "Mommy, are you scared to go away again?" Emma asked. Sarah thought about it carefully. "A little scared, yes, but I know you'll be okay. You have people who love you, and you have me even when I'm far away." "I'm proud of you, Mommy," Emma said seriously. "You're a hero." "So are you, baby girl." Sarah hugged her tight. "So are you." As the sun set over Oceanside, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in months: peace. She'd learned that strength came in many forms. It came from standing up to bullies. It came from asking for help. It came from community and friendship and refusing to give up. She'd also learned that being a good mother didn't mean being perfect or always present. It meant loving fiercely, fighting for what mattered, and teaching her daughter to do the same. Jack walked over with Tyler, carrying coffee for both of them. "Deployment brief go okay?" "Better than okay. They're putting me up for promotion." Sarah smiled. "Apparently, handling hostile civilians under pressure is a valuable skill." Jack laughed. Who knew? As they watched their children play together, Sarah felt grateful for the unexpected alliance that had saved her. A single SEAL dad and a struggling Navy mom, finding strength in shared experience and mutual respect. "Hey, Jack," Sarah said quietly. "When I get back, we should grab dinner sometime. As adults, I mean, without the kids." Jack's smile was warm. "I'd like that." Emma ran over, breathless and happy. "Mommy, Tyler says when you come home next time, we can all go to the beach together." "That sounds perfect," Sarah said, ruffling her daughter's hair. And for the first time in a long time, the future felt perfect too. Not easy, nothing ever was, but perfect in its possibility, in its promise of community and belonging and second chances. Sarah had won more than a battle against bullies. She'd won the right to be exactly who she was, a warrior, a mother, and a woman who refused to be diminished by anyone's narrow expectations. The next morning, as Sarah prepared to leave for deployment, she found a letter slipped under her door. It was from Admiral Hayes. "Lieutenant Commander Mitchell," it read, "your strength in adversity has not gone unnoticed. Upon your return from deployment, you are being reassigned to a training command where you will help develop policies to support military families in civilian communities. Your experience matters. Your voice matters. Use both to make things better for those who come after you. Fair winds and following seas. Sarah folded the letter carefully and tucked it in her sea bag. Then she knelt down to hug Emma one last time. "I love you to the moon and back," she whispered. "And back again," Emma whispered back. "Be safe, Mommy, be a hero." "Always," Sarah promised, "always." And as she drove away toward her next mission, Sarah knew that the most important battle she'd ever fought wasn't overseas. It was right here, in a small town in Virginia, where she'd learned that real courage meant standing up not just against enemies, but against injustice in all its forms. She was a Navy SEAL commander, a single mother, and a woman who'd been underestimated and survived. And she was just getting started.